Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon from wherever you're listening from. My name is Joseph STETTER, and I'm the host of the Resume Spur in Corporate Cultures. I've been trying to provide a lot of value and connect the dots that whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an employee, being different than everybody else and doing a little bit extra, especially today, is what's going to get you noticed. It's what's going to get you ahead, and it's what's going to help you be successful, whether it's applying for a job to owning a business. The skill sets, the character are all the same. And I'm super excited to have our guest today, Gordon D. Melville, who is known as the long-bearded guy, the CEO and Legacy Resilience Strategies at Jewel International, the king of IQ. He's also the executive producer and radio host, podcaster, and TV personality of the weekly nationally syndicated The Long-Bearded Guy. He's an elite performance catalyst for 2023-2024 finalist pro basketball team, and a multiple times award-winning international best-selling author, as well as an internationally renowned keynote speaker who is on a mission to positively change the lives of every man he meets. He's worked with the likes of Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, and Zig Ziglar, developing his own coaching specializations. And when he's not writing, podcasting, coaching, he can be found focusing on his spiritual health along with his wife of 32 plus years and 3 teenage sons. Let's welcome Gordon D. Melville, the long-bearded guy, to the show. Yay, welcome. Thank you.
It's so good to be here, Joseph.
It's a pleasure and an honor. And thank you again. So let's start with, first of all, kind of what got you on the path of becoming an elite kind of performance coach and specializing in IQ. And I forgot to add in your edification, very, very important, one of the best huggers I've ever met, right? Like hands down, one of the best hugs there is.
I received that. You know what? I love hugging people. I have that connection is just, there's ways to do that really can really connect us. And so, you know what? I love hugging everybody, my guy friends, everybody, kids, everybody. I love hugging everybody. And you know what? Thank you so much for having me on today. I've been looking forward to this. You and I have been trying to connect this with schedules and whatnot for a long time, and I've always had mad respect for you. You inspire me all the time, so it was an honor to be on. I'm so happy to be with you tonight. In terms of what got me into this space, there's two quick timelines, and I'll touch them really fast. The first one is that I was Energizer Bunny for 3 decades more plus, and go, 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 go. And I was teaching self-care, but I wasn't doing any self-care, which I think is a common theme for a lot of us, especially for guys. Unless we cough up a lung, we're not going to a doctor. So, but eventually my body said, hey, you know what, I'm out. And in late 2015, my body said, I can't do it anymore. You're not paying attention. You're not listening. We're sending you big clues. And I just was not paying attention. And so I was bedridden for 2 years. And in the middle of that, there was a suicide attempt. And I look back at that now, that was Papa gifting me. And I call God Papa because of my relationship with him. But he gifted me perspective I needed to get my mission done. And I didn't understand. I had a really high emotional quotient before, but I didn't understand deep depression and suicide the way I needed to. And so he let me go through that and gifted that to me, that perspective. And it's opened a multitude of doors since then. The other timeline that runs simultaneously to that was that I got to meet, early in my 20s, I went into the automotive industry. And I got to see Grant Cardone about 3 months into my car selling career. And he took me from being a 12 car a month guy to a 40 plus car a month guy. And so they reached out and said, can you help us teach this stuff? And I said no initially, because you had to be on the road all the time. And so I was dating and my life was here, and which I married my wife. And anyway, I didn't want to be on the road. And then over a little bit of a period of time, my relationship with my wife deteriorated. And so I was like, okay, you know what? We have to be separated for a year to get divorced. So if that's what's going to happen, I'll go on the road with Grant and we'll figure it out. And so being able to reach out that way, I was 7 years with Grant on and off. And but the other thing, and the reason I mention it, is because the gentleman that was managing Grant at the time, Bob Moore, and we lost him during COVID, but he was a promoter, and his other claim to fame is that he put Zig Ziglar on his first stage. So we had unbridled access to Zig. I miss him terribly. He was such a huge piece of my life, but he put me on that path. Gord, to be successful, you only need to do 3 things. And I'm like, what are they? What are they? And he said, you need to go to 2 business conferences every year. You need to read 4 to 6 books a month, and you need to journal every day. As long as you do that, you'll be successful. And so middle of August, coincidentally or not so coincidentally, is 35 years of doing personal development at that level. So I go to 4 business conferences every year. I read 5 to 7 books, business books every month, and I journal in 5 different journals every day. And it set me on that personal development journey. I'm now certified. All the people that Zig connected us to, Jim Rohn was gone by then, but he had been a mentor with audio and video and whatnot, books and whatnot. But Tony Robbins and Les Brown and all these iconic Mount Rushmore type thought leaders have all become, John Maxwell, have all become friends and mentors to me over the last 35 years. And so I'm certified to teach Napoleon Hill. I'm certified to teach in a half a dozen disciplines with Robbins Vadonis, which is Tony's schooling stuff. And I'm certified NLP. And when you put those 2 timelines together, it creates a type of human that needed a catalyst to push, right? And so the suicide attempt was the catalyst that pushed me into a space. And so now I'm doing the other part.
Interesting you said that. By the way, do you have something clicking beside you, and like we're hearing a clicking sounds? I'm not sure if it's something on your side, because I checked my computer, there's nothing there, but just to make sure there's no surrounding
noise. Not that I see, but
okay.
It could be my bone.
Okay. Well, and again, fascinating story. It's interesting enough because one of the gentlemen that we both know, Michael Faber, was on kind of last week, and he also talked about, more his sibling committing suicide, and then how that became part of his mission and part of the bigger picture. But you know what? I love how you said, you kind of rejected this, because I can relate that I'm a very high energy guy myself and always go. And now that I've been blessed to be married and have kids and I still have energy, but my energy is shifting where it's like, okay, I need energy for my kids, but then, to do the personal things. And I agree with you that often you're so focused on, okay, business needs to go, that we forget our health. And, I'm going through some of that myself right now. And, obviously you've worked with some amazing people. So this advice you said it was read regularly, journal regularly, and what was the third one? Sorry.
Was 2 business conferences a year.
Okay, right. So tell me a little bit about, let's say, the value that you get or that people can get from, let's say, reading, or not just reading books, but also going to these conferences, right? Like what do you personally get out of it, and why do you recommend them to people as well?
Absolutely. Well, I think it stretches you. Whether you're going to a conference, you're putting new stuff in, right? You're putting new information in. You're adding to yourself. You're expanding your mind. Once it expands, you can't bring it back. And so going to business conferences, I'm exposing myself to another bunch of ideas. I'm exposing myself to another group of people. When I'm reading, I'm stretching my mind. I'm at a point now where I'll read stuff that I know I don't agree with based on the back of the book, right? It says whatever the write-up is, I'm like, I don't believe that. But when I read it, it does something where it pushes me back. It challenges what I believe and why I believe it. And then what it will sometimes do is more round out what the thought process is, right? This is what I believe, but wow, you know what? I never thought of it like that before. So maybe I can tweak it or pivot it a little bit or whatnot. It grows. But pouring in all the time, pouring it in constantly. And so, and whether it's books, whether it's even journaling. Why do I journal? Because it's a way to let it out. It's one of the techniques we use and that I teach to be able to release some of the things that ideas, release emotion, release lots of different things. And it allows that expansion to happen, right? If I just stay in the hothouse of what I know, nothing changes, right? There's sort of that phrase that says, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If I don't do something, and you and I both know somebody that used to ask, hey, did you use the best mind knowledge you have to get where you are now? Yes. I've never had anybody say no. But when you say, great, are you where you want to be? Well, no. Great, you need to do something different, infuse something different into what you do. And so, right, the reading thing is a big one, because there's 4 levels of people that read, that have some kind of an opinion on books. The first level is people that just don't read. They don't pick up a book. And statistically, most people don't read anything after they quit school. But the next level is people that love the look of books. They love the look of a library. So they buy lots of books. They've never cracked one open ever, but they love the way they look. The next level love to read. So they buy books and then they read books. They don't do anything with the information, but they read the book. And then the top level, they buy books, they read books, but they take the information and do something with it, right? If you're going to read it, do something with it. Don't just, it's sort of that whole concept around the road to hell was paved with good intention. Like it's the good intention that was the problem. It wasn't. It's not the good intention that's the problem. It's that nobody did anything with the good intention, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to say here that there is a level where I agree with you. And Gord, maybe check your microphone connection, because it seems that the ticking is coming from kind of when you're speaking. So maybe something is loose. But I'm just going to touch on a few things, because, I think what you're saying is brilliant and very important. And I think when people are stuck and they're frustrated and they kind of go through the cycle of life of, okay, I have to do my job and, this, they almost kind of forget the importance of reading. And even, I can say myself with 2 beautiful little kids, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old who are both super high energy. And it's very important for me to form those bonds, especially early on when they're young, and spend more time with them. So between the routine of the work and the routine of the family and everything that, my reading is less than I'd like it to be, because right now there are kind of, I'll say chosen time constraint, because I choose to spend more time with my family. But I don't think that enough, people understand the importance of reading it. And I wanted to kind of touch base because I wanted to get your thoughts on, the audio version of a book where you can hear the book and you can still gather the content, or even something like Blinkist, which gives you like the key points of it. Because I think for me, there's a level where I'm probably between level 3 and 4 of the levels that you said that your books. I have a beautiful library. I love to read. There's certain things I read for curiosity, and there's certain things that I go, I don't need this right now, but I'm going to implement it later. So for example, even in my business right now, I'm reading certain things that are very interesting to me. Like I'm reading a book right now that talks about generational trauma and how like your parents have trauma. And I'm going, okay, I get this, but here I've already chosen to do things that are different than what the book says. So I understand the connection, for example, but I also am in a position where I'm going, just because there's generational trauma, I as an individual still have choice. I still have the opportunity to progress. And so I don't use that as a crutch. Yes, I might have certain filters, especially with, based on experience from childhood, as they relate to my mom, because my father passed away 13 years ago, but even with my dad. But there are dynamics that I go, okay, but for now, this is where it is, and I accept that. But I wanted to get a little bit your insights first on kind of audiobooks and these tools that also offer kind of the key points of the book, and if they are equally as valuable as the book themselves.
I think, to your point, there when you see different things, right? I will go back and read a book I read 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or read last year, because I'm in a different place. So when I read something that gives me a synopsis of what's there, they're taking out what they think was the most important thing that seemed to be important for them, where they are in that moment. May or may not be where I am. Audiobooks, I love listening to audiobooks, but they frustrate me a little bit unless I have the physical copy in front of me, because I'm the type of person that underlines and highlights and writes in the margin and whatnot, right? So if I'm listening to it in the car, I'm like, oh, that's awesome, I want to write that down, and I'm moving and I can't write it down, and I'm like, all right, now I got to find it again when I get home. So I'm a very much, I like the tangible, being able to hold a book. But that being said, I think if you're doing audiobook, it's better than not reading at all, because you're getting the information from the book, right? And whether you're paying really close attention to it or not, you're getting that input into you. So that's invaluable, no matter what the book is. You can get something from every book. So being able to write stuff down. I always, when I'm reading, I have this style, because to be able to do that many books that fast, I read through them really quick the first time. And if it resonates with me, or I go, oh, that's good, or I really like that. And keep in mind too, it's all personal development business books I'm reading. I'm not reading nonfiction. I'm reading autobiographies. If I'm reading fiction, it's all nonfiction, pardon me. It's all nonfiction. It's not fiction at all. So very little fiction, almost none. So being able to listen to a book that I'm listening to it with the intention of learning and growing. So I've always got a journal handle, right? Even if I'm listening to it on audio, I'll listen to it on audio and read it in the book. So I'm following along in the book with what I'm hearing. Because sometimes if the author's reading the book, so the audio is the actual author, I'm hearing their voice when I'm reading the book, which can be helpful, right? Because I'm getting the inflection of that was intended by the author, not necessarily the inflection I put on it.
Right.
If that makes sense, right?
It does make sense. And I want to kind of transition a little bit to kind of the work you do, because as you mentioned, you try to help men that are a little bit lost, a little bit stuck, frustrated with their life. So tell us a little bit about your kind of elite coaching programs, and if you have anything that's coming up in terms of events that you're hosting, or anything that's just and understand, and kind of tell us a little bit about the value that people can expect to get from your programs, please?
Absolutely. I do a program, my flagship program is called Box Inside Out, and it's not outside the box thinking, it's eradicate the box. There's no box. I teach 7 levels of emotional intelligence for men. And my avatars are high-level entrepreneurial men and pro athletes, because they're already at a really high level. They already understand discipline. They already understand that they need to do something different and infuse something different into their life, which that attracts me. And so I do have cohorts of Box Inside Out coming that I'm taking registrations for at the moment. And what you get out of that literally is equipped to be able to deal with life. As guys, a lot of times the world doesn't care how much pain we're in or how much hurt's there or what's going on in our life. None of that matters. The society basically says, show up as we need you to and do what we need you to be, or be who we need you to be. And we're not worrying about the rest of it. And so what that does is breed into us a culture and a mindset that says, I don't know how to deal with it. Don't cry, don't look weak, so we hold it inside. And guys tend to do one of two things with those emotions. We either push them down, so we're holding that dis-ease in our bodies, which makes us sick, or we put it in a box and we put it on a shelf because we're not supposed to deal with it. Either way, we have residual pain from it. And so we try to dull the pain. Well, how do we do that? Drugs, alcohol, gambling, porn, whatever it is. The point is now I have a vice on top of the problem. And if it sits there long enough, there's an addiction on top of the problem. So being able to put the tools in our toolbox to be able to deal with those things. And to your point about guys that struggle, I find it's less about, and the experience has been, my guy friends go, Gord, it's critical what you're doing. Thank you for doing what you're doing. And they'll go, I'm okay, but I know some people that need this. And I'm like, if you're okay, it's kind of like buying insurance. You have to buy insurance when you don't need it, because when you do need it, you don't qualify. If you feel like everything is good, that's when you want to put the tools in your toolbox to be able to deal with life. Because when you get into the hard stuff, it's very difficult to find a really good tool and deal with the problem. So, I'm encouraging guys all the time. If you feel like you're in a great place, congratulations, that's awesome. But come see me. It's only an hour. Guys, is 90 minutes every other week. And the price is ridiculous based on, I'm not looking for the dollars and cents. I don't want the dollars to be the restriction. I want them to be able to plug into it. So it's not at the normal rates I would charge for pro athletes and whatever, and it's a group, but it's a very small, intimate group. We don't go bigger than 12 in each cohort. So it fills up fairly quick, but you can expect, if you're open to that, and you know what, we talk a lot about different programs. Lots of programs will work. Do you know what I mean? Weight Watchers will work if you do Weight Watchers. So many of us sign up and then we don't do anything with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a
Right.
gym membership. Gord, can you try moving your teacup or coffee cup out of the way? It might be the one, something that's
I
clicking
did.
here.
I moved it onto my book, so it's not. I don't hear anything sound on my end, so I'm not sure what's rattling because there's nothing.
Okay. Anyways, you have a shout out from Gregory Hall, and then he also asked, in general, is there a best time of the day to read? I think, me personally, I can answer that it's kind of when you have your time, whatever that is. In my routine, kids wake up. My son might wake up as early as 5 a.m. and the day happens, and then we pick him up from daycare. So until at least 7:30, 8 o'clock when they're asleep, I can't really speak too much, like go and read a book kind of thing. Obviously, but do you have a preference of when you read, or is it kind of based on the day and the energy and the health and everything like that?
It can be all those things. It really can, right? But with intention, and when I'm talking to pro athletes, I'll tell them, what time do you get up in the morning? And because they're pro athletes, usually they're at a higher level. So they're at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Some of them are at 5 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, so how long is it going to take for you to do your personal self-care? And we can, we discuss with them, there's some universal things that you can do or should do. But I do some of that reading as part of that. And so, I say to them, if you're normally getting up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and it's going to take you an hour to do your self-care, eating breakfast, meditating, prayer, reading, journaling, some exercise, whatever it is. If it takes an hour to do that, then you're now getting up at 4 o'clock. You're getting up at, right. And now I wouldn't go earlier than 4 necessarily, although Eric Thomas gets up at 3. So, and it's kind of hard to argue with his effectiveness and his success. But, you know, because to your point, life happens, right? So we get distraction from all this other things, and I didn't fit it in. When someone says to me, these pro athletes look at me and go, Gord, I don't have the time or the money. And I'm like, you know what? With all due respect, what I just heard was I don't want to. Because if the things we really want to do, we make the time for it, whether it's good for us or not good for us, right? I was talking to a smoker the other day, and he's like, I don't have time to do personal development or read. And I'm like, well, you find time to smoke, right? But that's a priority. That's a priority. So, you know, in terms of what's a priority for us, if we want to find the time, we'll make the time. And so for me, best time is first thing in the morning before life gets started, right? If I can get up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, the rest of the world's not up until 6, 7 o'clock. I've got a 2 or 3 hour window. I've accomplished all this stuff before most people get out of bed. And it gives us that little bit of extra. In your opening, you talked about doing that little bit of extra, right? Extraordinary doesn't take that much, sadly, it doesn't take that much more anymore to be above everybody else. And so being able to read or do any kind of personal development or self-care, which is critical. I'm a walking, talking billboard for what happens when you don't do any self-care. So I jump up and down on that big. We need to do our self-care. It's selfish not to do self-care. And we do it before, not instead of. I want to make that clear. It's not, because that's selfish. Self-care instead of my responsibilities, that's selfish. But I believe it's selfish not to do self-care first so that I can show up and be who I want to be or need to be for my family and my friends and my responsibilities.
Right. And here's where I'm going to tie it into somebody in the workforce. Like at the end of the day, you might have salespeople that are very good at selling whatever product or service the industry that they work in, but they are clueless as to how to have a regular conversation, for example, or they're clueless in kind of understanding that there's other elements of the business, not just the sales, for example. And so in the workforce, you know, as a corporate culturist, I often speak to the idea that you need to create a model where you're not just preaching, we're all about wellness and care. You're actually doing it, and you're showing that the leadership is doing it. So if the leadership talks about the fact that they go to the gym in the morning, or they go to the gym at lunch or something, then, and all of a sudden creates incentives for employees to do the same, that's where there's a separation between lip service and actually doing it. And I think this is where, Gord, what you talk about in terms of, you know, the first part is taking a step forward and kind of admitting it, because, you know, sometimes we're like, myself included, I'm very stubborn sometimes. And, you know, I had an enlarged aorta beginning like around the pandemic time. And again, something happened along the way where my cholesterol medication and my blood thinner medication, the exact same pink pill. And I kind of stopped taking the heart medication, blood thinner medication, and I only took the cholesterol. And all of a sudden my aorta had like doubled in size in a matter of a year. And because of pandemic, my surgery was delayed. And it was supposed to be a preventive surgery because I'd gotten to the orange zone. Now, the interesting part is the day of my surgery, when they put the camera in before they started working, they found a massive blood clot underneath my enlarged aorta. So instead of a 2-hour surgery, I ended up having like a 9-hour surgery because they cut open my entire rib cage and put in a mechanical valve. And so, you know, I mean, I had certainty and I had faith that I'm coming out of that surgery completely healthy. When I woke up and I was like, they were like, oh, we had to put a mechanical valve. I'm like, okay, cool. But to me, what was ironic was once I was off the morphine and kind of normalized, I looked at the food that they were giving me and I was like, can you explain to me why everything on this tray is processed for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there's not a single fruit or vegetable here? And given that I just had major heart surgery, shouldn't I have food that actually has nutrients in it? Right. And nurses looked and went, cutbacks. And I was like, yeah, literally, that was the answer, like cutbacks. Like, I'm like, even in Apple. Sorry. So, I understand that. And there's a level where, there's things that need to come back and there. And I think this is where it ties in because, being a better performer, you could be a better leader. You can be a better person or whatever. And it's doing those little things. So whether it's having, and again, I'm a huge advocate for getting mentors and having multiple mentors in your life, because there's a different perspective, there's a different, potentially different bias, different experience. And kind of like you talked about, you've worked with, Zig Ziglar, or you've worked with Grant Cardone, you've worked with the Think and Grow Rich Institute. Those are like big, and they each approach, like they all say the same thing eventually, but they approach it in a different way. Exactly right. And I think that's where, it's very important for these kind of conversations. So again, you said there's a cohort coming up. Can you tell the listeners when that is, and what, again, other than the 90 minutes, kind of what are some of the conversation, what are some of the exercises you're going to do? Obviously, so that people can understand. And from the show, obviously, we have your contact information on the ticker, can get a hold of you and potentially take that first step to be better, whether it's as an employee, whether it's as a leader, where you have a team, or whether it's as an entrepreneur where you're doing small shifts to make a big difference.
Right. Well, and the time for Box Inside Out, I've kind of set it that I run it as soon as I have 12 people. So that as soon as the cohort's full, we start to do it. So that the date itself isn't set. In terms of something I touch on just real quick, although it's to your point about whether you're have a team, you're an athlete, you're a business person, we talk about three things with our athletes: skill set, gear set, mindset. And so the skill is the education that, and for the athletes, they practice all the time. They're always on the court, they're always on the ice, they're always on the field, they're practicing hours and hours and hours and hours, practicing time and money and energy to practice to get their skill better. They work with the gear, right? They'll buy them the latest gear. Golfers are a great example of that. I got to spend $1,200 to buy a big Bertha that's going to give me an extra 30 yards on my drive, which won't happen, by the way, because I'm going to slice it and it's going to nullify it anyway. But I have to have the best gear, right? So all the different bits and pieces, right down to the ice you put on your hips or your knees or your shoulders or whatever, that's all gear. People spend a lot of time and money on their gear. Nobody pays attention to their mindset. So somebody with LeBron James level skill and world-class gear with a mediocre mindset will get schooled by somebody with mediocre skill, mediocre gear, and a really good mindset. I make the point because once they leave sports, when you're talking about entrepreneurs, you're talking about business people and leaders, those same three things work.
I just want to touch on something very quickly because it ties into what you said earlier with books and stuff like that. So one of my favorite authors, his name is Malcolm Gladwell. And in one of his books, I believe it was Blink, I don't quote me exactly, he did an experiment where he had, at Chicago University, he had basketball players that he said, for the next month, I want you to just practice every single day. Then he had another set saying, for the next month, I want you to think about your shot, your defense, and visualize it and kind of visualize your game getting better as you're doing it. And he had one set of groups say, do nothing for the next month. The athletes that trained every day improved by about 10%. The athletes that didn't touch the ball for a month, but mentally kept thinking about the game and how they're improving it, actually improved by about 30%. And the athletes that never touched the ball deteriorated by about 20%, kind of thing, right? So there is a level where you're absolutely right that, you could be the most talented player in the world, but if you have a negative mindset and you kind of have everybody wants to win, but when ego gets in the way and you forget, like, as good as LeBron is, he cannot win by himself. He cannot defend 5 players by himself. He cannot get every single rebound in the game, kind of thing. So
it's not, it goes past even not having your mind. We get distracted by all kinds of things, right? So all it takes is somebody that says something that sets you off, right? An official that says the wrong thing to you, or an opposing player that says something to you, or a fan is screaming, and it sets you off. It gets you out of your game. And so it's understanding, and LeBron's a great example of that. He's in game 7 of the finals. They've got no time left on the clock. He was just fouled, so they gave him 3 free throws. Their team is down by 2 with no time left on the clock. Most NBA players will implode on themselves in that situation, not because they don't understand the mechanics of a free throw, but because the situation eclipses them and they don't have ultimate mastery control of their mind and their emotion. And so they can't even, they're shaking so bad they can't get the ball in the hoop. And so the mastery level, and when I talk about those 3 things, all it takes is somebody, you practiced all this time and energy and money. Teams spend all this money to have this talent on their team, and then all it takes is a fight with their girlfriend, or the government calls them and says you owe 10 grand in back tax just before a game, and all of that time and money and energy you spend in practice goes right out the window because you can't harness it the way you need to be able to move yourself forward. But the same thing happens in business. The skills are the all your degrees and your bachelor, all the education and experience you've got is the skill you bring. The gear is all your hardware and software and all the tools you need to do your job. But again, nobody pays attention to their mindset. The executives that do really well, the leaders that do really well, are thinking way more about their mindset than they ever do about their skill or their gear. Right. So, and again, so it's a life skill. It's not just a sports thing. It's not just a leadership thing. Anybody that pays attention to their skill and their gear and their mindset, but mindset first before anything else. Right.
Right. 100% agree. We have a few minutes left, so I just kind of want to put everything together. And I understand, like, and I want to emphasize this because, mindset is extremely important, but you still need the skill and the gear,
Absolutely you do.
Right. Sure. You can't just have mindset and go, everything's going to happen because I have the mindset if you don't take action. There are certain things that I can say, like, for now, let's say I'm trying to take action, like, okay, I'm making healthier choices of eating. I'm doing this to try and get to more. But I know that right now, if you were to ask me to, let's say, like, my wife signed me up for a 5K foam run here in Toronto. And I'm like, I'll walk 5Ks, but I can't run. Like, my wife is running, 10 to 15 kilometers. She's already completed in a few marathons, and she's planning on doing like a half marathon, I think in October, November. I don't remember the date right now, but like, she trains for it 3 times a week. I'm like, my running involves running after my kids, but that's usually not long distance kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Right? So just final thoughts from you, Gordon, and in terms of not only your program and people getting a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you, and kind of final thoughts about getting to that next level on a personal level, a professional level, an athletic level, business level.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The easiest way to get a hold of me is either thelongbeardedguy@gmail.com or Jewel. I think I gave you Jewel.coaching. Jewel is spelled Jewil, not EL. So sometimes the long bearded guy is easier. But plug the long bearded guy into any social media platform, you'll find me. My show's on 450 platforms, nationally syndicated. It's there every week, multiple times. So you can grab me there. As far as final thought, you know what? It comes back to what, and to bring us kind of full circle to what you were talking about at the beginning, we were given free will and choice. And so if we choose If we want to choose to level up, you have to choose to do it. And then you have to be willing to change who you are today. Be willing to let go of who you think you are today to be able to move yourself forward and become who you're supposed to be tomorrow. And so many people don't want that change. Less than 3% of the population does any kind of personal development. Less than 3%, because it's hard. It's work. It's nasty. It's messy, right? But for a seed to grow, you have to bury it. Got to put it in the dirt, right?
And
so,
as a resume whisperer, it is amazing to me how many people are like, I've applied to jobs on Indeed and there's no jobs. I'm like, is your resume attractive? Are you doing anything? So thank you again, Gordon. It's been an amazing show. Thank you for the insights and the value of connecting the dots from different levels. I'll definitely have a follow-up conversation with you personally. And again, get a hold of the long-bearded guy. And if you ever have an opportunity to connect with him in person, make sure to ask for a hug. You'll never regret it. I promise you that. My name is Joseph Stetter. I am the Resume Whisperer in Corporate Cultures. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I hope you have a great evening, a beautiful morning, and a great afternoon, and a productive and beautiful day. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to the channel if you like the content that we're providing.